Good evening, and welcome to WANA Live, the reading series of the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia. I'm your host, Damian Dressick, and this is your other host.
It's Christina Fasonic. How's it going, Damian?
Uh, it's been quite the week, Christina.
It has, yes. And I'm grateful that we have a bit of a diversion from the week by having on a writer on the show to read us some of his work and talk a little bit about writing.
I'm excited about this writer. I've seen his work before, and you introduced me to his work, and I was really grateful. Wasn't somebody with whom I was conversing. I was like, wow, what a wonderful voice. So I'm looking forward to who are we to tell the people who we have on.
So, while we have had many West Virginians read on our show, it's not every day that we have a West Virginian from the same place in West Virginia that I'm from, the northern panhandle of West Virginia. So, Jacob Strautmann, who's our guest tonight, his second book of poems, New Vrindaban, from Four Way Books 2024, celebrates music, late friends, and fatherhood. His poems have appeared in the Boston Globe, the Appalachian Journal, on the Seawall, Artsfuse, and Nixes Mate. He has worked in theater, administration, and communication roles at Boston University, where he also has taught poetry, fiction, and playwriting to undergraduates. A recipient of the Massachusetts Poetry Fellowship, you can find his work at jacobstrautmann.com. And I'll also say that he has another great work of poetry out there, which is The Land of the Dead
is
is
for business.
Yes, which I should know because that is in reference, of course, to when the governor of there it is. That's the suspension bridge down the street from my house in Wheeling. And I should know exactly the title of your book because that's when the governor of West Virginia said that our state motto was, "We're open for business." And all of us West Virginians were like, excuse me, do we have a red light in the window? I mean, what's going on here? And so it's nice to see you on the show, Jacob. It's good to have a departure for a little while, which is one of the things that art and literature can do for us, is let us escape a little.
Yeah. Well, when I launched the Land of the Dead is open for business, a week later, everything shut down for the pandemic. So I was wondering what the crisis was going to be this time for New Vrindaban. I'm sorry that it's come to pass. So
yeah. So I wanted to ask you. I know the answer a little, but I want to know a little bit more. So the title of your book is New Vrindaban, and people who may not know this know that that is the name of a community in Marshall County where we are both originally from, that is a Hare Krishna community, which is not something you would expect to find in West Virginia. But you did tell me that not much of this book is actually about New Vrindaban. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I actually started writing this book after Land of the Dead. I had about 4 years before it even came out, and then I was working on poems for about 4 years after that. And I kept telling myself I wasn't going to write any West Virginia poems this time. It was going to be anything else. And I found myself continuing to turn out, these West Virginia poems. But one of the North Stars for when I remember my childhood is looking out, from the hill that I grew up on. My family still lives there, and looking out over Low Gap and a couple hills and valleys, and 2 ridges over is McCreary's Ridge, where the Hare Krishna commune is. So as I was playing in the dirt as a kid, I could hear the chants on the loudspeakers. When I was a teenager and would go visit, I could spot my house from the front of the Palace of Gold. And yeah, so it was always kind of present. When I went to college, I decided to go to Wheeling Jesuit University, no longer that. And my friends, who were all theology majors, and a couple of them were very involved in music, saw the New Vrindaban as an amazing kind of rich cultural place to visit, and so I was starting to see it in a new light at that point. And so I've got a poem in here that takes place in one of these visits that we had together. They're my college friends. Unfortunately, a couple of them my late friends, and so kind of getting that down on paper was very important to me. But there's also something about the New Vrindaban as a place that has a lot of a hard history. Its difficulties through the 80s and 90s, getting kicked out of ISKCON, and then getting back into ISKCON, back into the major organization of Krishna consciousness. And then the strides that the organization has made and the community has made since then has been really kind of inspiring, and I that's why I wanted to honor that with this book.
And that continues in that community. They have put a lot of money into rebuilding. So as they were doing the spiritual work and the mental work necessary to rebuild their community, they were also doing everything they could to make it the beautiful place that it was when it was originally built. I don't know if you've been there recently, but it's gorgeous. It's so beautiful and so well cared for. And I think so, like, the outside reflects the inside of what has been happening in that community for the last couple of decades.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So why don't we disappear and let you read some of these West Virginia poems that you didn't want to write? Like James Wright said this, right? He said he left Ohio and he's like, I kept trying to forget about Ohio, but there it was in my writing over and over again. So we'll be back.
Great. Thank you so much, Christina. And thank you guys for hosting it. WANA Live's a real pleasure to catch whenever I get a chance to. I actually, for this reading, I picked 3 poems. One is a West Virginia poem, actually a Wheeling poem. Another is a Boston area poem, reflecting more where I live now. And then one is an Iceland poem. But I'll start with the Wheeling poem. This is called The Ohio Again, Nightbird of Memory. What hypochondriacal writer probably dies tonight on the 7th floor, wrapped in the concupiscence of antiseptic and cotton's drier radiant? She has never let go like this before, beholds her body near the wall before the curtain, a library of Steubenvillian vows. The clippity-clop shuffle of the night nurse who marks something small in his book, and his muttering might be the lengthening of her body as it sharpens every character into crocodile. And when he pivots, attending to his rounds, she cuts for the water's edge. She is attending to hers, comes to remember the river, corrugated and varicose as a dimpled thigh. Step down, reader, amid the waterfowl. The lights from Wheeling trawl along the black wakes of barges. A few of the publisher and the designer of the book has done a really lovely job giving it that musical feel, and it's the book is divided into 2 sides, like a record album. One place where the songs kind of come to the fore is in a group of poems I call winter songs, and the second of these is The Garden, dedicated to my wife Valerie. The Garden. Boston is the middle of my life. The thatched roof over the middle of my life and the fire turning in the middle of my life are yours. To be cold there in our corner bedroom, the evening whir of an electric heater that can't forestall the inevitable nor'easters like violins, anxiety licking her length by the clock, Orion and his club passing silently over, with promises deep and as far away as spring, where the pink bulb of a hot water bottle you place between us heats us like a coal drawn from the bed of heat itself, to be cold and find warmth. A wall blank in the early morning, the sprig of moonrise prisms and simmers, is finding valor where I expected none. A gale of cherry blossom would have said as much and wouldn't have said as much. And actually, this is also the final poem in the book, and a good place to end tonight's reading, too. This is The Exile's Farm. Other Icelandic horses chattered behind the gate. Wind preened the owner's silences. When it was noon, a farmhand arrived, and in their gray lingua igni numbered the daily chore. He climbed his mount, then, in quick consonants, his back to the wind, asked who we were, our children's names, and why we chose his farm and countryside. He taught us how we rein in, chronicled the people of the valley filled with his hands. Volcanic peak beyond his arm, sagas running through. The mains alive with his voice, we set out to skirt the service tracks. A bird caught the eye's solitary flight over barn and fence, wildflower, ditch, a landscape that forces one to be decisive. I thought of my copy of Burning of Njal, folded quietly in translation, bundled in the big man's truck with our passports and tickets for our evening return, and how somewhere near the trails we followed, a man risked everything for an appreciation of this beauty, convicted, exiled from his family farm, whose land we knew lay one broad gesture away, who, having kissed his wife and boys and given last instruction to his servant, stood tall in the stirrups to resolve, to survey the cradle of his home, black, swift-moving waters, bowl of the sky, the bright clouds unmoored in the wind. Thanks.
Thanks, that was such wonderful.
Damien,
yeah.
wait 1 second. Hold on, say something else.
Something else.
Well, you have it. Can you hear that, Jacob? There's a bit of a
Almost like feedback.
Yeah, feedback. Say something else.
Steubenvillian.
Steubenvillian. Yeah, so I love that you made that reference in your poem. I just did a reading in Steubenville a couple weeks ago, and what is it about this place that once you've been here, once you've lived here in this Ohio Valley, what do you think is it that keeps you coming back to it in your work, even when you don't want to? Like, what is the pull? What is the draw?
That's a good question. I mean, in this particular poem's case, this particular poem actually has gone back probably to 2004, 2003. I probably had first drafts of this where it was a poem about my grandmother and her sister. And my grandmother and her sister were interesting in that they were, my grandmother often referred to herself as an orphan. Her father, after her mother died when she was a baby, her father had given one girl, the older one, Aunt Daisy, to one family in the Ohio Valley and in Steubenville. And then just down the road, gave my grandmother to another family. And Aunt Daisy went to a family where she was, I think she was maybe the only child or second child. and my grandmother was the 11th. But the older child remembered that she had this sister, and it was completely her that kept them together and knowing they were sisters, even though they had different last names and different families. So, so I started to write this poem about their experience, and the fact that my grandmother remembers speaking language from the old country. She referred to it as Serbian. I'm not sure if that's actually what it was or not, but that's where the poem started, with that kind of impetus. But what it's become is something very different. There was even a point where it wasn't a writer; it was just a woman in a hospital who may or may not be dying. And so it just kind of, the language just kept taking this to new places, and away from, let's call it, family history.
That's fascinating, because it makes me think of when you talked about, them speaking this language in the home. And of course, there were lots of Eastern European folks that settled here to work in the mines and the factories. But I was thinking, well, that's a different look at the mother tongue.
Yeah.
Because the family she settled with, I'm guessing that your grandmother herself wasn't Serbian, or was she? And was this her mother tongue? That fascinates me quite a bit.
Yeah. I think perhaps her older sister, had spoken and returned to that language only when she was, close to the end. Whereas my grandmother, I believe, grew up speaking Ohio Valley English. So
I can understand that. So, Damien, how's your mic over there so you can contribute?
I'm uncertain.
It's good. You're good.
Oh, that's good.
Go ahead.
No, I very much enjoyed the work. I thought it was full of rich imagery, and there was a wonderful smoothness to it as well. I think that was, uh, the thinking was very incisive, and yet the work seemed to move with a. No, I'm hearing it.
We don't hear it, though.
we don't hear enough.
Keep talking.
It seemed to move with a fluidity.
I want to say that when I was first learning how to write poems, one of either I read it in a book, or one of my teachers professed it, which was to end on an image and don't explain it. And I find myself ending on an image in almost every line and not explaining it, and that's been kind of taken into, I think, the overall way that I think about what poetry does, which is harder to define more than that, because I think it does a lot and it does a little, depending on where you are.
That's really masterful, though. What a great suggestion. I just taught William Carlos Williams today, and talk about somebody who ends on an image, and sometimes it's just an image, no explanation. But that is that's interesting. I love that. I'm going to take that with me from tonight's show.
If I were to guess the provenance of that, I think it might be Stanley Kunitz, who was a teacher of my teachers. So I think that's how it came down to me.
That's really powerful, because I think that as writers, and maybe writers of prose at times, we might feel like we have to explain something so that people understand it. But I like the idea of ending with an image, and there it is. That's great. Damien, you want to add to that?
Well, no, I think it's always very good advice. It's one of the things I try and really impart to my own students is the idea is don't try and explain this. This isn't an Aesop's fable. If there's meaning there, let what you've got do the work. But I like what you said a lot. It does a lot and it does a little. Like that's good. I'm gonna be trotting that out, and I fully
I used to tell my students that, and I haven't been teaching for a while now, but I used to tell my students that, their job is to build the island in the middle of the sea, and the atmosphere, the birds, the clouds, that'll all be formed by itself. You don't have to do it yourself. And to try to get them to move toward the concrete, away from the abstract that might be floating above it. And I always enjoyed drawing that on the board. I don't know if it ever got into anybody's head, but but I always appreciated the freedom that gives a writer, especially a poet, to just put it there and just step back from it.
I love that. That's awesome. So what are you working on now, or are you still kind of like in the mode with this book since it came out not long ago?
Yeah, this came out in September. I've done 2 or 3 readings, and then this one, I've got one more next week, and then I think things will settle down for readings for it. But I probably finished writing the poems in this in 21, I want to say 22, beginning of 22. And I've been working, I've got about 40 poems into a new project that I've actually put on pause since last April. And this new project is the artist that contributed to the front here. This is a person that reached out to me after the first book came out. She saw my name come up because she was watching the web for her own name. She's an artist in Frankfurt named Eva Strautmann. We don't know if we're related, but we kind of come from the same area in Germany, and our families. And so we have been working as if we were cousins. So she took one of my poems and generated this body of work, about 40, 50, 60 paintings. And I've been slowly going through those paintings and writing the poems against those paintings. And so the majority of them are horses. And so the project is called Golden Horses. This is actually Red Horses number 4. I'm not sure you can see the red right now, but yeah, I feel like she found the horses in my work, and of course I grew up. That same hill that I mentioned before was sitting over top of the largest Arabian horse farm in West Virginia for some time. My Aunt Joyce ran that, so horses have always been a kind of part of the landscape around my growing up.
Wow, that is amazing. Talk about ekphrastic writing, like to the max, right?
Yeah.
That is I'm fascinated. I can't wait to see that. And of course, when that book does come out, you'll be able to go together and talk about it.
I would hope so. Yeah. I mean, we've already kind of come up against how do we get across the ocean there? How do we find funders for that? And also, I probably should find a English to German translator. So that's still something in the works at this point. But the other thing I wanted to mention that I'm working on, and the reason that I put the Golden Horses on pause back in April, is I'm 115 pages into a novel, and this is a pulp sci-fi space station style novel. I wanted to finally get a chance to play with characters, actually based off of a poem in this. And I was fighting the good fight, thinking I was getting ready for NaNoWriMo, and then there has been no writing this month. So maybe I'll push that off till next month.
Yeah, for sure. And someday when someone writes a nice critical essay about you, it could be titled "From Horses to Aliens," the writing of Jacob Strautmann, or so. And by the way, I've been saying your name slightly wrong all this time. It's Strautmann.
Strautmann.
Yeah, I've been saying Strautmann. Look at that.
Oh, okay.
It's like the difference between Laura and Laura, because my best friend is Laura, and some people call her Laura, and it's like, no, it's two different things. So it was so fun to have you on. Damien, would you like to add anything? I know you've been having mic issues over there, so
Well, at the
that I've
moment
been.
I've got barking dog issues, or there must be something outside because our dog just went completely insane.
Oh no.
Uh, no, I like the horses, the idea, and working with visual artists. I was thinking about there's an interview with Tracy Emin in the current issue of Freeze, and when somebody asks in the interviewer asks her about her practice, and she says, "I don't have a practice. That's for kids. I make art," and it reminded me a little bit of your what you had to say about the idea of the island.
I like that. That's blunt and to the point. So, anyways, it was great to have you on, Jake. And I know that hopefully you'll be coming back this way. You're going to do a reading here in the Ohio Valley?
I haven't had anything planned yet, but I do hope I'll be heading back into town for the first time with the book in the summer, usually to visit my family. But yeah, I'll see about getting something set up, and hopefully I can read to Ohio Valley folk. I would really enjoy that.
It'd be lovely. You should call our library.
True. Thank you.
Yeah. Sean Duffy. All right. I will talk to you later, and we are.
Thank you very much, Jason.
Yes.
Coming on.
It's Jacob. We'll see all of you later. It's even written right there. It's been a long week. Anyways, we will see.
I knew the name of the book off the top of my head. I'm reading it.
True. It's like me. I always know people's pets, but I forget the owner's name always, forever. You have that beagle, right? Anyways, we'll see you all next week with a new writer.
All right. Have a great night, y'all.
Take care of yourselves, everybody.